travel at speeds pushing 200 miles per hour. The very best drivers in the world putting their lives on the line every week. It's time to get the lowdown on this week's contenders, plus a look at the key driver matchups. Right now on Gone Racin.
Welcome into another edition of Gone Racing. This is Jeff Motley alongside Brendan Gaughan, and as you can see, we're not in our VSiN studios at the South Point. Today we're actually doing our show via Skype remotely. Brendan, you got a little bit of news to tell everybody, I guess, that doesn't know already, and then we'll get into the racing world on why we're sitting here in our houses.
Well, yes, as was so eloquently put on the front page of the Las Vegas Review-Journal, thank you very much, Ron Kantowski. I could win the Daytona 500 and not get that much coverage. I contracted the coronavirus last week. I got tested and found out I was positive, so I am at home, and as you see in the background, doing a lot of Lego and spending a lot of time with my puppy. So that has been the big thing for me. And hey, good news is, Jeff, I had a midweek race to watch at least, so I got some racing in.
You did, and for everybody that wants to know, I also got a test because Brendan and I did the show together last Thursday in the studio, and I tested negative, so if anybody wants to know. But if anybody ever sees a copy of today's Las Vegas Review-Journal, war declared is the only headline I've seen that was bigger than the one with Brendan's COVID test. And I will defend Ron a little bit because I know he doesn't write the headlines. He just writes the story.
No.
He doesn't have anything to do with placement.
Good news is, Mr. Motley, I am fine. I am. The only symptoms I've had are a headache and like a post-nasal drip. Almost felt like allergies. So I really got fortunate that I went and got tested and found out. So no big deal. We get to, life goes on, and we will continue to talk about the great racing that we've seen, notwithstanding the All-Star race, which I can't say was quite what we expected. But
we'll gloss over that one.
Yeah, but the last points-paying race was another exciting race. We've had a lot of fun on that side.
Yeah, and let me tell you, if you were a bettor and you took a flyer on a rookie like Cole Custer, Cole Custer would have paid you a lot of money. I think Brendan and I could have probably gone through and picked 25 different drivers to win. And Brendan, I don't know that we would have picked Cole Custer to win that race at Kentucky. No,
and I don't think either of us did on air or off air last week.
We mentioned his name.
Well, look, we talked about Eric Almirola, a Stewart-Haas Ford that we think could be the next one to win. And Eric Almirola, he still could be a guy that could win. I mean, you look at how strong he was in the first stage. You look at what he did, but none of us looked at the 100-to-1 shot, Cole Custer, his teammate at Stewart-Haas, to be the guy that got that. I mean, dude, he was in the DraftKings top 3. He was 25-to-1. I mean, come on. That was just awesome. And the race itself, Motley, how about the pass for the end? That was phenomenal. He did a brilliant job.
Well, and you know what's amazing? He looked at those veteran drivers like Truex and Kevin Harvick, and he had to think to himself, look, those guys are probably going to run 1-2. I'm going to do the best I can. And he gets that restart, and he sees Truex and Harvick make contact with each other, and then Blaney make contact with them, and he all of a sudden, it was just like everything just opened up for him, and he drove around everybody on the outside. And he had to have been looking down that backstretch on that final lap saying, what just happened?
You know, if you look at the win I had at Kentucky, 6 years ago, very similar, and that track lends itself to that, Jeff. What happens is on that last restart, everybody battled, but they came out of turn 3, and all 3 front runners were all focusing on each other. You know, they were looking at each other, they were side drafting, they were pulling down each one to side draft the next guy. And Cole Custer had a rocket ship run off of 4. Nobody on his outside, was able to use all the racetrack, was able to sneak up and get just to the outside of Martin Truex Jr. And as soon as he sniffed some of that air, he side drafted him, pulled himself forward, and got launched out of the rocket ship. And I think the thing we're not talking about is Ryan Blaney hitting that massive dip at the bottom of Kentucky. If you watch the replay, Ryan Blaney got airtime, almost wrecked all of them, but a phenomenal job by him to save that race car. And there you go. I mean, Cole Custer, look, you got to take advantage of those situations, and super proud of Cole and any bettor that had him. There's a rumor going around town that somebody did have a bet on Cole Custer to win that race. So, look, somebody asked me, did we lose a bunch of money? at 100-to-1 shot, somebody probably put a $10 bill down, a $20 bill, and made a lot of money at 100-to-1. So congratulations to them.
Yeah, well, I think it was. What's that? I think Isaiah weighed in there. What's that? Did he? 3 bets.
3
So
bets.
3 bets on Cole Custer. Okay. $10 bets. Do we know how much they bet?
Yeah,
Okay.
like we said,
All right.
that's exactly that's what you'd expect right there. Jeff is a fan, came in, but that's what makes our racing so great about sports betting. That's why we talk about this every week, that there's a fan somewhere that is a fan of Cole Custer. There's a fan that is a fan of Matt DiBenedetto. That's a fan. You're going to get that $5, $10 bet on these guys, and the return is great when it comes in. Hell, 25-to-1 in the top 3 was a great return. I mean, that's a hell of a number. So that was awesome. Really excited for him. Really glad for the bettors that put him down. And now that we go to Texas, do we say that maybe somebody can do the same thing? You never know.
Well, I think it's certainly possible. And you mentioned Matt DiBenedetto. He finished 3rd. Let's give a little bit of credit there too. I mean, here's a guy who was about 16-to-1, I think, for a top 3 finish, and he came in and finished 3rd in the race. And I think Matt DiBenedetto, I just like talking about him because, number one, he's a good guy, and number two, he just is a guy that seems every week to get closer and closer and closer to knocking on the door to get that first win.
No, I mean, that was one of those where he wasn't as strong, say, as like he was at Bristol earlier this year or last year even at Bristol. But Matt DiBenedetto has proven week in and week out that he is starting to get there and be a guy to reckon with. So I think DiBenedetto will get one before too long. I'm not going to say as soon as Eric Almirola, but he's going to get one. They both really, I can't say how great some of the people are that we've been talking about now. It's no longer just the Kevin Harvicks and the Denny Hamlins and the Kyle Bushes and the Truexes. We're talking about guys that can win these things, that have longer odds. I mean, heck, this week it looks like Eric Almirola is 20-to-1 to win the race, and that's a guy that I would put as not a co-favorite, but I'd put him up there as a favorite.
Well, certainly seeing his teammate Cole Custer get a win has got to be a little bit of a shot in the arm for Almirola, and might be a little booster in the rear end too, for he and Clint Boyer to get up there and seeing how well Kevin Harvick's done, and now that Cole Custer's got a win. And I think we need to say something else about Cole Custer. I mean, he didn't just back into that win. Yes, he came from 6th on the final restart, but, Cole Custer had to be running 6th on that final restart after almost 400 miles of racing at Kentucky. So it wasn't one of those deals where he stayed out on fuel or there was a rain delay or a fog delay or something like that. I mean, he legitimately was contending for the win and went up there and won the race.
Yeah, I mean, look, he wasn't a threat all day long, but he had been in the top 10 most of the day. Was running very strong. All the Fords, Jeff, were running very strong. The Penske Fords, the Fords had what looked like to be a very good package for that racetrack. It was rolling well, but he was, like we talk about Eric Almirola being in the top 5 every week, like we talk about Matt DiBenedetto being there more often, like we've talked about Tyler Reddick starting to show some strength being there. These guys have been there and are starting to make noise. And if you look at that top 10, Jeff, look at names. Yes, okay, Martin Truex is there. Kevin Harvick is there, of course. But Christopher Bell in 7th wasn't the rookie of the race. Eric Almirola, that top 10 streak now at 6, 5 top 5, 6 top 10s. And Tyler Reddick, 10th.
Three rookies in the top 10.
That's a heck of a stack. And once again, what name is missing off that, Mr. Motley? There's a very big name missing out of that top 10.
Kyle Busch.
There you go.
And I think we're going to get to that in just a minute. But we're wrapping up Kentucky. We need to talk a little bit about Wednesday night's All-Star race. We didn't really address it a whole lot on our show because we didn't have any betting lines on it. But, I'm going to tell you my first impression. I like it being at Bristol. But one of the things I think that's always made Bristol interesting is after about a 40 to 50 lap run, you tend to see the leader get into heavy lap traffic. That sometimes lets the 2nd, 3rd, 4th place cars catch up to the leader. And sometimes that's what makes Bristol really, really interesting when these guys get desperate about going a lap down and fighting with the leader. The segments were so short last night, we rarely ever got into lap cars. And I thought that probably was part of the reason why it was so easy for Chase Elliott to run away with that race last night.
It's funny. I was saying to myself watching it, dang it, there's not enough cars in the field for lap traffic, because lap traffic does cause quite a bit of motion in that race. It does move things around. It does create issues. The other thing that to me was just kind of lackluster was without the upper groove. Look, semantics, people yell and scream and say things all the time about Bristol, old Bristol, new Bristol. But these guys, they don't root and gouge on the bottom the way that we used to root and gouge on the bottom. And this upper groove has been a better race to me without any rubber down. You saw what happened anytime somebody went up there. It was an ice skating rink. So I think you needed more laps.
Tried it a few times. Yeah.
Yeah. You needed more laps to get rubber down. You needed more laps to get the outer groove in. You needed a little bit of a practice to have that rubber down. Any other time, I think you'd have more cars on that racetrack. You may have gotten a different race for that. But with it being bottom groove, once one guy cleared, you needed longer segments and more rubber, and I think that would have been a difference.
What did you think about the other two things everybody was talking about? I know that's not a betting thing. I liked the number on the car where it was. I was okay with that. The lights under the bottom of the car, I think kids loved it. And look, we are trying to attract new fans, but I'd like to have seen those colors be the same color as the car instead of the manufacturer colors.
A couple things were, to me, look, I'm goofy. I'm a goober. I thought the lights, I must be my mentality level. I'm a kid. The problem I had, and I talked about this with Danielle Trotta on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, is it's so bright at Bristol. Jeff, it's just so bright. With it being that bright, it's very difficult to have those lights really shine, really do something. And I was hoping that Jerry Caldwell and the group at Bristol were going to do something, shut the lights off, kind of do something to spotlight those more, something just Humpy Wheeler-esque I was hoping for, and I didn't get that.
I think the TV network and the sanctioning body would have frowned upon that.
Well, could have done something in intros or something, had them all lit up. But I do agree. Like Kurt Busch's Monster Energy car, that should have been a green light underneath it. And Napa Auto Parts could have picked blue, and you could have done something like that than just manufacturer specific. But that was nothing to me. I also think a big nothing was the choose cone. I did not see it make a huge difference in that race.
But would you like to see it every week, though?
No, I don't care. Listen, my job as a race car driver is to restart as good as possible. I don't care what line I'm in. My job is to get up and do the best job I can. So
but shouldn't you have the option?
No. First second. That's the way it goes. You line up in the order you are on the racetrack. So to me, nobody is going to give up the top 9 positions so that 10th place can get to the inside to restart. That's not going to happen. And to me, last night, I think the furthest back you saw was a 4th place. The top 4 picked the outside. Kevin Harvick picked the bottom, and Harvick ended up second after the restart because he rooted his way out of the way. Congratulations. I think that everybody else that didn't want to choose it was a bunch of wimps and don't want to go for the lead. So I don't care about the choose cone. It's not a huge deal to me. I don't think it'll affect things. And the thing that I did like, and this I think I'm going to take the most heat for, I liked the smaller rear number pushed back. I thought it did. I'm a businessman. I own my own teams. I've raced in the sport a long time. Sponsor dollars want billboard. NASCAR is one of the greatest billboards in all of racing history, and you just found a way to give them an even bigger billboard. Much easier to read. I thought it was great. The number was still very visible, and I thought it was extremely cool having the big sponsors on the door. I'm for that as a full-time change in the future.
I liked it too. So you and I agree totally on that. All right, one thing we want to talk about before we get into talking about Texas, because we only have a few races left before we get into the playoffs, is kind of the way the playoff picture is shaping up. And I think one of the important things that we have to take from Kentucky is basically Cole Custer took a spot from somebody. A spot I don't think anybody thought Cole Custer would make the playoffs, and now we know he's in. That certainly puts some other guys sort of, Jimmy Johnson right now is on the border of not making the playoffs. And we've got a guy like Kyle Busch who has not won a race, has not won a stage yet. Who should be nervous right now?
Well, right now, I think Jimmy Johnson is nervous. You look, he's sitting on the bubble right now because of that win. And there are other people that are sitting there going, oh, man, it could be very close. You got Austin Dillon and Tyler Reddick who are just sitting outside it. But William Byron, 2 Hendrick cars are only 30 and 24 points to the good. This is going to be a heck of a battle coming down to, what is it? What's the last race in the Daytona? Daytona is the last race to set the playoffs.
And we know how anybody could win at Daytona.
No, and
right?
Well, you're so wrong, Motley. But I look at some guys that are on the outside looking in, going, okay, who do I think can win? And to me, immediately sitting in 19th right now is Eric Jones. Just outside that, Eric Jones is 30-ish, 45-ish points out of being there. And Eric Jones can win, I think, many different times. If Eric Jones wins, now that pushes 7-time champion out, Jimmy Johnson. And if you get another winner, like in a Daytona where anything can happen, we also have the Daytona Road Course still coming, Jeff. And that Daytona Road Course could play into getting a random winner in that race. So I think that there's a lot of guys should be extremely nervous right now. And anybody from Clint Boyer, William Byron, Jimmy Johnson, those guys on back could be could be in trouble.
And I know you kind of poo-poo this with me a little bit, but Kyle Busch has 0 playoff points. At what point does he get worried about not having any playoff points going into the playoffs?
Look, a guy like Kyle Busch, the difference is he can win to me any race, Jeff. I mean, any round of the playoffs, any racetrack, Kyle Busch can win. So there's the biggest difference why a Kyle Busch, to me, doesn't need to panic that he isn't getting points. Because we'd have to do some research, Jeff, but has there ever been a playoff round that Kyle Busch pointed his way in, did not win to guarantee his way in the last 2-3 years? I don't know. I think he's won probably at least one race in every one of those to advance to the next round. But if he's not going to win, he needs to start being nervous. He needs to start getting some points. There's only, 7 races, you said, left before the playoffs start.
Yeah, there's not very many, and I think it's kind of getting down to that point that they got to start getting nervous. But, okay, let's start turning our attention a little bit to Texas. Before we get into the odds, first off, I know that Texas Motor Speedway might be, I know Las Vegas is your hometown, but Texas Motor Speedway might be your favorite racetrack as a race car driver because you've had more success there than any other track that you've ever raced on.
No,
what is it about that track?
Listen, everybody asked that, Motley, and if I knew the answer to what made us so good there, I'd have bottled it up and sold it for lots of money and kept doing it. We just had everything right on our little Las Vegas race team back in those days. But that track, to me, is so much fun. I love the people there. You know them well. Kenton, Eddie, all the staff at Texas Motor Speedway. They do a great job. The Speedway itself, the people, the fans of Texas, everything's bigger in Texas. I'm sorry if it's Vegas, but Texas has, Big Hoss, the biggest video screen in the world or whatever they call it. They do a great job for their people there. Have we heard they're still going to be allowing fans? Did they say yes or no on that yet?
They have said yes on fans. They are selling tickets, and there will be fans at the race on Sunday only.
Okay, so Sunday only, they get some fans. So we get 2 races in a row, All-Star race and Texas. We get some fans. I'm sure they're going to do the same thing like Bristol did, separate them out, make them come in different times, all that. So great job for them. And the new Turn 1 at Texas, Motley, when that track rubbers in and that outside groove of Turn 1, that new Turn 1 at Texas, finally becomes usable, that, to me, is going to be one of the coolest corners in our sport. 200-plus miles an hour. It's so flat. It's so wide. You think you want to go all the way out there at the wall, and one day we will. I don't know if it'll be this race, but one day that will happen.
Well, and we hear a lot of divers talk about the exit off Turn 2 and the flattening out of the racetrack. Kind of explain that to folks that maybe don't understand what has changed about Texas and why it's different.
So, look, we used to call a lot of these mile and a half, Motley, cookie cutter, right? Vegas used to look like Kansas and Kentucky and Chicago, and Texas, Atlanta, and Charlotte were all the same. They've all kind of changed little bits and pieces. What Texas did was they took Turn 1 and they knocked a bunch of that banking out of it, Jeff. They moved the bottom of the racetrack way far down near the apron, and they moved the outside of the racetrack down. You might know the actual numbers, 5, 6, 7 degrees, something like that. They took a bunch of banking out of it. And so makes it more difficult to drive, moved everybody down further to the bottom, but it leaves you this 40-acre field up on the outside that is so tempting to go out there and drive. And when it finally does come in, that is, I wish that I was still racing when that thing starts to come in, because that's going to be an insane corner and fun to drive.
Well, and now we start looking at Texas, and we look at who's going to be our favorites and things like that. I mean, Kevin Harvick has been the dominant guy there over the last few years.
Oh,
and he's won 3 of the last 5 races there. There's a lot of really good race car drivers who have offers at Texas. And part of that's because Harvick's won 3 out of the last 5. Denny Hamlin won a race there last year. Kyle Busch has got a few wins there, and Jimmy Johnson dominated that track for so long. So there's so many different guys out there.
And Jimmy still has 3 wins in the last 10 races, but like you said, that's kind of a distant history. You got Kyle Busch with 3. Kyle Busch with 2, Kevin Harvick with 3. You got a Denny Hamlin win in the middle there. So you've got, these guys that have kind of dominated, not a lot of wins, but you got to watch out. I named him earlier, Eric Jones. Eric Jones has 7 races, 5 top 5s and 3 top 10s, 3 fourths in a row is what he had. So you got to pay attention to Eric Jones to me, and that could be the guy we just talked about on the playoff points outside looking in.
Well, and Keselowski and Truex, neither one have wins there. So I think those are a couple of guys that are going to be hungry.
No, a lot of guys are being hungry, but those are names that you really got to pay attention to. Him and Eric Almirola to me.
Well, when we come back on Gone Racing, we're going to start breaking down the top 10s, our top 3s, and our race winners. We'll be right back on Gone Racing.
Welcome back to our weekly NASCAR show. live from the Sportsbook at the South Point Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. Now, back to Gone Racin.
Welcome back to Gone Racing. Jeff Motley in my house and Brendan Gaughan in his house. Brendan,
quarantine house.
Brendan's in the quarantine house, and I'm just keeping my distance from Brendan. We really like each other, but we have to stay apart for a couple weeks. So, Brendan, we're talking about Texas Motor Speedway. We get into the odds to win. No big surprise that Kevin Harvick is the favorite. Number one, he is still the hottest driver on the circuit. Certainly had a chance to win at Kentucky. He was leading there on the final restart. He's won 3 of the last 5 races at Texas. He's at plus 300. We see Kyle Busch, who hasn't won a race all year, at plus 600. Denny Hamlin, who won there last year, plus 600. Chase Elliott, plus 7. And Martin Truex Jr., plus 9. And then 3 Penske cars who are pretty good on mile-and-a-half tracks. Brad Keselowski at 10-1. Blaney and Logano each at 11. Some little bit longer odds, Eric Almirola, Jimmy Johnson at 20. Alex Bowman, Kurt Busch, and Eric Jones, a guy I think you like a lot, at 25-1. Several guys at 33, William Byron, Matt DiBenedetto, and Matt Kenseth. We see Clint Bowyer at 50, Christopher Bell at 66, and last week's winner, Cole Custer, 80, along with Tyler Reddick at 80. Thoughts on the odds just to win the race?
You know, you look at that, and Kevin Harvick absolutely should be plus 300. You know what? His average finish last 10 races is 3.8. I mean, that is just phenomenal, the average finish he's got there. And having, Joey Logano, that long odds to me, honestly, 11-1. Joey Logano's last 10 races, his average finish, 8.9. So, I mean, those are some decent numbers when you talk about 11-1 on a Joey Logano who's lately he's not been, all that exciting to me, but he is very good at Texas. But Eric Jones, you're picking out the guy that I want to talk about. Eric Jones, 25-1, average finish in his is 9.4. He's got 5 top 10s and 7 attempts there. I really, really like that kid. I think that he could be our next winner. But you got to look at, does Clint Bowyer at 50-1 with the fact that Cole Custer's running so good? Does that make you want to go on him? And Eric Almirola 20-1. We're still saying he's hot. There's a lot of numbers there I like.
Yeah, and a guy finished 3rd last week at Kentucky. He's 33-1, and Matt DiBenedetto. And I did the Edge with Jonathan Von Tobel earlier, and we talked about Eric Jones specifically. And the one thing I told him about Eric Jones, mile-and-a-half tracks, I really like Eric Jones. He has a great track record on mile-and-a-half tracks. But, man, does he feel snake bit this year. It just seems like anything that can go wrong does go wrong for Eric Jones. And I don't know if there's just a funk that team's got to snap out of. And some of it has been bad luck.
I mean, look, he got wrecked at Pocono in the one deal. Then he came back with a good finish. He
blew a tire at Indianapolis running 3rd.
Blew a tire at Indy, and a lot of tire problems on those Gibbs cars. Those, to me, were self-inflicted. They over-cambered a little bit. So, I mean, yes, there's been some, some of that, but he's running so strong every race, and he has such great finishes here. I look at his mile-and-a-half prowess and it jumps out to me, that number. I really like that he's that high up.
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing I think that jumps out to me, and right now if you're looking at our screen, we got some of the longer odds, seeing Austin Dillon, Ryan Newman at 100-1, and Ricky Stenhouse 125.
100-1 one last week.
100-1. Yeah. Michael McDowell 1,000-1. I think if Bubba Wallace is behind him, those odds are going to be 10,000-1 at Texas after the All-Star race. But I want to go back to page 1. The 3 that kind of just jump out to me a little bit is those 3 Penske cars all being double digits. Brad Keselowski is 10, and Blaney and Logano are 11. And you mentioned Logano a little while ago, but yeah, I think that's a pretty interesting line on all 3 of those cars right there.
Ryan Blaney has probably been the strongest of the Penske cars lately. Look, Brad Keselowski won those races. I think you said he lucked his way into them when he won those earlier, but I said he had to be there. But Ryan Blaney's been the strongest to me, and he's also done fairly well. 10 races, 4 top 10s at Texas. His last race last year was an 8th place. He had a 2nd place in 2018 in the last race. So, I mean, been very strong there, but the Penske cars are not as strong to me as those Stewart-Haas Fords. They are the class of the Ford field.
Well, they certainly have been, and when you see how well Almirola's run, and then you see Cole Custer getting a win last night. Last week at Kentucky. So I think that certainly puts a lot of emphasis on those Stewart-Haas cars right now.
Yeah, and Joe Gibbs Racing, look, to me right now, it's the same story we've had the last couple of years, Motley. Joe Gibbs Racing, Stewart-Haas Racing, class the field with Penske being a third organization there. Other guys are tightening up, but it's still those two organizations at the top. And we
could see Chase Elliott get in there. Okay, when we come back on Gone Racing, we're going to talk about the top three, and we're going to talk about driver head-to-head matchups.
Welcome back to our weekly NASCAR show, live from the Sportsbook at the South Point Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. Now, back to Gone Racin.
Just a reminder, if you missed anything from today's show, you can download the Gone Racin podcast today. Not only is it free, but you can download and listen to the show before it airs here on VSiN. The new Gone Racing podcast is available via Apple, Google, iHeart, Spotify, Stitcher, and at vsin.com/podcasts. Jeff Motley back along with Brendan Gaughan on Gone Racing. Moving into the top three chances at Texas this weekend. Kind of mirrors our odds to win the race, if you will, the top threes. Seeing Kevin Harvick. First time in a while, though, Brendan.
First time all season.
We've seen a driver with a negative number beside their name, a -125 on Kevin Harvick finishing top three. And then we got Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin plus 175, Chase Elliott plus 200, Truex Keselowski plus 250 and plus 275, Blaney Logano at 300, Almirola Johnson 500, and so on and so forth. Kind of mirrors the odds to win the race.
Well, they normally do, but to me, the two things that stick out to me are, one, our first minus on the top three all season long with Kevin Harvick minus 125, and I don't think I'll complain next week when Kevin Harvick might be a plus 125 again. I might be a little more apt to bet it, but to me, I'm still fading Kyle Busch plus 175 in a top three. He has not been top three in I can't tell you how many races. I am still not going to pick that number for Kyle Busch. Denny Hamlin, sure. But I'm not jumping on that Kyle Busch bandwagon. But I will go down to that Eric Jones plus 600, that Matt DiBenedetto plus 800, the Eric Almirola plus 500. I do like those a lot.
Well, and I think that you and I probably have kind of come into the agreement that on Kyle Busch, it's proved something to me right now. I mean, he's got to do something to make us want to go bet him right now.
I mean, you even look last night at the All-Star race. He wasn't a factor. He wasn't there at all most of the night. So, to me, the story of fading Kyle Busch is still I'm still fading him until he can. And once again, I'd still kill for that fade, Jeff. I mean, he's still finishing top tens. He's still, but he's just not the Kyle Busch of the last couple of years at this moment. The question is, the first person to jump on him, Jeff, will you'll get paid off when he finally does turn around, and Kyle Busch will turn around at some point.
Well, but shockingly, I mean, we're not really even seeing the odds going, that crazy. Yeah. I'm really surprised he's not up to a little higher number.
Well, and that's the funny thing is they still have him down that low because everybody probably is still betting him, and you still know that when Kyle Busch does turn it on, guess what? You can't have him at plus 500. That's just not going to fly. There's going to be too much money on him. So you're going to keep that number low, but I'm still fading that number. That to me is not the chalk that I'm looking for at the moment. But Kevin Harvick minus 125. Average finish, Jeff, 3.8 in 10 races. That's why he's minus one. He could be minus 250 and still is worth betting.
Yeah, that's probably true, especially going to this. One other thing I noticed from the top threes, it seemed like the numbers are a little bit lower this week. Like last week, we saw Matt DiBenedetto was 16-1 to get a top three, and he finished top three. Well, he's all the way down to plus 800 this week. And we see guys like Matt Kenseth, William Byron, plus 800. And then we got Cole Custer and Tyler Reddick are 16-1 for a top three. So it seems to me like the numbers for top three, because we've had some upsets like Custer and DiBenedetto last week, Almirola getting all these top threes, it seems like those numbers have kind of come down for everybody.
Well, I think right now DraftKings, which is where we get our top three from, they might have got hit a few times. Some big numbers have hit, and so they're probably trying to slim down that risk that they're putting out there. I mean, look, putting Michael McDowell at plus 200, he's been running top 10. He could sneak his way into a top three if there's a fuel mileage or something goofy. They don't want to get hit with that, but they'll keep it at 200. Austin Dillon at 20-1, Ryan Newman 20-1. Those are two guys that could be top three, any weekend. So I think that they've had some exposure out there. They've got hit, and I think they're nervous to keep their risk that high.
Yeah, those hits were pretty hard over the last few weeks. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about the driver head-to-head matchups. Sometimes we don't get too caught up in those, but man, if you can beat Kevin Harvick, you can win some money this week. Look at
Kyle Busch is plus 160. I mean, you're never going to see that again. Take a picture.
Kyle Busch is plus 160. Denny Hamlin, who is the only driver not named Kevin Harvick to win in the last 2 years there, at plus 160. Wow. I don't think I've ever seen plus 160 beside Kyle Busch's name or Denny Hamlin's name over the last couple of years.
There's a couple fun ones mixed in there, though. You have an Austin Dillon, Tyler Reddick head-to-head matchup with, amazingly enough, Tyler Reddick as the favorite. I like the Christopher Bell, Jimmy Johnson. I'm sorry, Christopher Bell has been running better lately. And Jimmy is not – look, he's had some mediocre runs, but Christopher Bell has had, 3 top 10s the last 5 races? I think that Christopher Bell at plus 105 is a good hit right there.
Well, he has definitely shown that he's been running a little bit better. He's probably getting a little bit more comfortable with these cars. I've always said I think it's harder on the rookies not having this practice, even though then Custer goes out and wins a race, and Custer, Reddick, and Bell all go finish top 10 at Kentucky. I kind of like the fact that we see some different matchups. It's not some of the same. And how about Alex Bowman is plus 130 against Kurt Busch, and he's plus 135 against Eric Almirola. Maybe the plus 135 on Eric Almirola, maybe that one is fair, but a little surprised to see Bowman at plus 130 against Kurt.
Yeah, but Kurt also has not been running great lately.
He did finish fifth at Kentucky, though. But he finished fifth at Kentucky, so that wasn't bad. He did
finish fifth at Kentucky. He did come back and do decent there. And at Texas, he's on a streak of 9.77, 9.9. So he's been running well at Texas. That could be considered a surprise to me on that one. I'd agree with you on that. But it is some fun matchups. We got some really neat ones. Eric Jones, Matt DiBenedetto, two guys that we're both so high on. There is some fun numbers in the head-to-heads this week.
Well, and the other one that kind of gets me, and this is all about what have you done in the past. Chase Elliott plus 110 against Kyle Busch at minus 130. If anybody can actually look out there and say that Chase Elliott is not hotter than Kyle Busch or more consistent than Kyle Busch right now, I don't know what race they're watching.
Well, look, you got to go off of history there, and they're saying, okay, Chase Elliott not been Kyle Busch at Texas. But Chase Elliott has been last two races 13th and 32nd. But before that, a string of 5 top 5s in a row to start his career. So I jump on that number. I'm fading Kyle, so I jump on it.
Well, and I kind of like what Chase Elliott's done on these other mile-and-a-half tracks this year. He should have won the Coke 600. How well he run at Darlington, how well he's run everywhere. He got one race at Charlotte, too. So I think Chase Elliott's definitely going to be a guy to watch, and having him on the plus line I like against Kyle.
Well, he's been hot, and you like the hot guy.
He has been hot. Okay, when we come back on Gone Racing, we're going to break down the group matchups and give you our picks.
back to our weekly NASCAR show, live from the sportsbook at the South Point Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. Now, back to Gone Racin.
Welcome back to Gone Racing. Jeff Motley at Shea Motley and Brendan Gaughan at Shea Gaughan. We're doing Gone Racing remotely for the next couple of weeks. Brendan, we're getting into our last segment here, and one thing we love talking about are the group matchups as we head into Texas Motor Speedway this weekend. And, boy, I look at Group A, and why don't you just bet – all right, so let's talk about Group A. Kevin Harvick is plus 150, but then Kyle Busch plus 330 along with Denny Hamlin, and Ryan Blaney plus 345. So what would prevent a gambler – nothing would prevent him, obviously, but would you consider betting all three of the other guys against Harvick?
You could. I mean, you're going to end up on the positive side right there. It's a four-man horse race, and you're getting over plus 300 on each guy. You're going to at least come away with a point, an 0-3 win or a 0-4-5. But you could hedge that real easy. You could do a Kevin Harvick to win the race, and still get the better return where he's plus 300, and then pick, take it down to a three-man horse race and pick one of those guys. And now you're only, you're 50-50 as whether you can win it. So that's definitely that's the biggest disparity we've ever seen in Group A.
I was just blown away when I saw that. And seeing Ryan Blaney bumped up into Group A surprised me a little bit. You a little surprised by that at all?
The way how they mix these groups up sometimes, Jeff. They put Martin Truex this week down into Group B. You got Ryan Blaney up into Group A. It's just how they mix them up. But to me, seeing that Ryan Blaney, I think he deserves to be there some weeks. But Group B to me is fun. You got your two teammates, your two Penske teammates in there. So that's probably why they did it.
Group B, a really, really tight-packed group there with Truex and Logano, the favorites, plus 265, and then Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski at plus 270. Interestingly enough there, Joey Logano is the only one in Group B that actually has a win here, and Logano's win was several years ago. So these guys are all kind of searching for something at Texas.
Yeah, Martin Truex Jr., as good as he's been at mile and a half, Texas has not been one of them. That's the thing you have to look at is how dominant he's been. He's got a second-place finish all the way back in 2017, got a 37th, the 9th, the 12th, the 6th. So definitely not the dominant mile and a half Martin Truex Jr. that we see in other mile and a half racetracks.
Yeah, now we look at Group C, and there's another huge disparity. We've got two clear-cut favorites in Kurt Busch and Eric Almirola plus 210, a big drop-off to Alex Bowman plus 310, and a guy that you and I have talked about a lot already on this show, Eric Jones, coming in at plus 400. Oh, boy, that is a big number. We don't see 400s very often in the group matchups.
No, I was going to pick Eric Jones in the DraftKings top three, but that means he's got to be top three in the field. I can get 400 of him. He's plus 600 there. He's plus 400 in this group matchup. Even though I like Eric Almirola a lot, I like a plus 400 on Eric Jones right there. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, I'm sort of with you there. I think we're probably going to find that out here a little bit later when we make our picks. Looking over at Group D, not surprised at all really to see Matt DiBenedetto be the favorite there in Group D. I mean, he's really kind of been the class above those other three guys. Jimmy Johnson is plus 275, and then William Byron and Tyler Reddick at plus 280. I would say as far as that group goes, that's probably a pretty good number on that group. DiBenedetto to me is clearly the favorite to win there.
I think that right there is probably the most normalized of all the groups. And I look and say, how the mighty have fallen. Jimmy Johnson back into Group D. He had snuck his way into Group C a couple weeks in a row. Now he's back down to Group D. So I think that's kind of the group that he, don't want to say deserves to be in, but it's about where he's been running. And DiBenedetto being the favorite, I think is the right matchup there too, Jeff. I mean, that's the odds look correct.
Yeah, I kind of agree with those. Now we look over into Group E. And Clint Boyer is a favorite at plus 220 in Group E. Then we see Christopher Bell plus 250 and Austin Dillon plus 290. And in last week's winner at Kentucky, Cole Custer at plus 325. And, you and I like to talk about momentum. Cole Custer's got to be feeling pretty good about himself.
Yeah, I think the bettors, I think at least the Westgate is looking at that saying, and the bettors aren't betting it. They're saying it was more of a fluke than it was a win. Cole Custer, look, he has not been anywhere near the strongest rookie all season long. So him winning, I think, was definitely one of the bigger upsets we've had in a long time. Clint Boyer is a guy that has been running fairly well. But Christopher Bell, to me, is the guy that's been coming on the strongest lately. So odds look right. That 325 does not entice me enough on Cole Custer. I don't see Lightning 2 weeks in a row.
And our last group, our Ron Flatter group, Group F, and we got Chris Buescher in there again this week. So Chris Buescher in the Ron Flatter Group F. Matt Kenseth is a favorite, plus 220. Ryan Newman, 245. Stenhouse, 290. Buescher, 335. Man, I'll be honest with you, that I don't have any feel for that group whatsoever there.
That is not the typical Group F, except for Chris Buescher is back in it. And honestly, being the dog, that's about how he's been running, Jeff. I mean, Chris Buescher has been an absolute non-thought in most of these races lately, not looking good. Wow, that is definitely a weird group. But Matt Kenseth being the favorite, I agree with most weeks. Just depends on which Matt Kenseth is going to show up this week.
All right, well, now it's getting to that point in the show where we got to a little bit put our money where our mouth is. Let's go. As much as I hate to do this, let's go back and take a look at last week. We were pounding our chests about how well we did at Indianapolis. We did not do so well. I got the only one right, picking Matt DiBenedetto to win his group in Group E, which gave me the minus 1.6. The Isaiah and the pit crew kind of hitching their wagon to Matt Kenseth 2 weeks in a row did not work out very well for them. You tried to pick a couple of race winners, and Kevin Harvick certainly had a chance there with 2 to go leading the race until that final restart. Didn't work out for you too much. So it sounds like you've got another co-host there in the background.
Yeah, apparently my co-host is ready to make her pick. But yeah,
you get to go first.
Week, so I guess I lead off. Yeah,
you get to go first.
Point at me. All right. So
Did I say that loud enough?
Yes, you said it. I heard it in my headset. They heard it in other places. I'm going to jump off the bandwagon first and go into the top 3, and I'm going to give me a little Matty D at plus 800. I think he's running well, and I'm not jumping off the Eric Almirola bandwagon. I'm taking both of those in the top 3. I think they both can do it. Then I'm going to jump over into the groups, and we talked about it. I'm going to take and do Eric Jones in Group C because I think that's a good hedge for me. That I get just as good of a return for him to win Group C as I do the others. Then I'm going to pick 2 head-to-heads. I'm picking Christopher Bell at plus 105 over Jimmy Johnson. I think that is a good return for that. And I'm jumping on the fade Kyle Busch, and I'm going to take Chase Elliott plus 110 over Kyle Busch at minus 130. To me, two good numbers to pass up right there.
All right, and I believe you have got Isaiah's picks and the pit crew.
Yes, I have Isaiah's picks, and he's allowed to pick again because he didn't beat us, so I think we're in no danger here also. Ryan Blaney to win at 11-1 is where he's starting off with. Then he's going to hedge it with the Kyle Busch in Group A at plus 330, like we talked a minute ago. He's going to do Brad Keselowski in Group B at plus 270. He's going to do Jimmy Johnson in Group D at plus 275. And he's doing Ryan Blaney over Denny Hamlin at plus 110. All
righty. And I guess that leaves it to me for the next round of picks. I think, is this the first time all year that I've gotten to pick last? Which picking last means I won last week. So that doesn't happen very often. Okay, my picks for this week. I'm going to go Ryan Blaney with the top 3. Really like Blaney this week. Think he's going to have a strong run. And the rest of my picks, I'm going to go into the groups. Man, I just don't see people beating Kevin Harvick. I didn't really want to pick him to win, but I'm going to go Kevin Harvick to win in Group A. I'm going to go with Chase Elliott to win in Group B. I'm going to go with Eric Jones in Group C. I'm with you, Brendan. That pick there to me, Eric Jones in Group C, that's such a big number against 3 guys that I think we all think he can beat. And I'm going to disagree with you a little bit in Group E. I'm going to go with Cole Custer. I'm going to kind of ride the momentum guy, and I think I'm going to do that really because the number is so high. I think if that number was a little bit lower, I might have stayed away from Cole Custer, but with that high number, with that high number, I think I'm going to give it a go. So with that, we got a couple minutes left in the show. Just some thoughts about Texas coming up. Normally we run Texas earlier in the spring, and then we run them in the playoffs. But now we're going to be running Texas here on probably a really hot July Texas day, something they're really not used to. They run a lot of night races at Texas and a lot of races in like late March, early April. So do you think that's going to make for a different racetrack this weekend?
I do. I like when they make these races on the hot, slick places. I mean, look, you and I are right here in Vegas, and anytime we get that hotter day, it's tougher to drive on. The bad part is it's tougher for the fans. A hot day race in July in Texas, you and I both know it's going to be hot, going to be humid. So for the fans that they allow there, it's going to be a little warm. But as far as the race goes, I think it's going to put on a great race. I'm hoping that allows for turn one to widen out and give me some of that turn one that I'm hoping to see one day.
Well, and I'm excited about it because I kind of agree with you. I think sometimes we've seen these races on these really, really hot days. I mean, look, we remember the first South Point 400 we ran here in Las Vegas when it was during the day, and the track was really slick, and it made some pretty crazy racing, to say the least.
No, and that's what the fans want is great racing, but we got to balance the great racing with, taking care of the fans. And so right now they're working hard on that, but it's going to be a good race. You and I are both going to be tuned in, and I got nothing else to do, so I'll be watching.
Well, and I think we'll all look forward to seeing the race at Texas. They won't have but so many fans there, but it will be a nice weekend at Texas. And then a very strange thing coming up the very next week. We're going to have a Thursday night race at Kansas Speedway. So that does it for me, Brendan Gaughan. We will see you next week on Gone Racin'.